Lola Rios Gutierrez's nightmare was realized October 17th, 2016. There's no way she could have known that the last time she would have seen her son Enrique was the night before. Desperate for help, she filed a missing persons report for Enrique on October 19th. The police didn't do though. I couldn't imagine going somewhere for help only to be told that your son was most likely a runaway and police were not going to investigate. I imagine she felt extremely betrayed. I mean, a mother knows when something is wrong. And having police officers tell you, oh no, everything is fine, they'll probably be back, should be a crime. Seriously, a crime. How many missing children were gone for days before investigators finally did something? Too many. Since the officers in the small town of Esperto, California weren't going to look into the disappearance of her son, she knew she had to spearhead the investigation all on her own. Missing person posters of Enrique Rios were handed out and plastered all over the town. What is extremely messed up about a missing person considered a runaway is that the news media usually won't cover the story. I couldn't imagine. Not only do investigators not care about your son missing, but you can't even televise your struggles. Lola found a little bit of hope though, when a heartbreaking video she made pleading for Enrique to contact her went viral. But the millions of shares and views did little to answer Lola's questions.
Baby boy, if you see my video, I love you. If you can call me, call me. I need you home, baby. I need you home.
With the help of Facebook and a horrible twist of events, the police department would finally find themselves taking Enrique Rios' disappearance seriously. With only social media to turn to for answers, Lola kept a close eye on anything and everything that could help her answer the question police refused to investigate. Where was her precious son Enrique? While sifting through social media posts, Lola came upon another post created by another distraught mother who was also missing her child. Alicia Moore was the author of this post. She lived just 20 minutes away from Esparto, California. Alicia's nightmare began on November 4th, 2016. She reported Elijah missing 2 days later on November 6th. Elijah and Enrique were friends. They had worked together and gone to school together. The two boys attended a construction training program through the Cesar Chavez Community School in Woodland, California. Enrique, who was 16, and Elijah, who had just turned 17, literally the day before he went missing. They both vanished 25 days apart from each other. Lola knew the cases had to be connected. How could they not be? In the heartbreaking revelations to come, Lola would find out that this is the moment that would eventually turn her son's neglected case into an official homicide investigation. Prior to Lola reaching out to Alicia, officers weren't taking Elijah's missing case seriously either, which is just unreal. Just like Lola, Alicia had to start her own investigation into the whereabouts of her son. I can't even imagine, nor do I ever want to understand what these mothers were going through. I would feel so pissed and betrayed. Alicia did a pretty dang good job, though. Both women did an amazing job. Alicia tracked down Elijah's last known whereabouts on November 4th, 2016, to his school where he attended his classes earlier that day. Alicia also found surveillance video of Elijah cashing a check at a California check cashing location located at 115 Main Street in Woodland, California. Hearing that the police had not been to these locations to inquire about her missing son infuriated Alicia, and rightfully freaking so. After Lola contacted Alicia, the two mothers would work together to light a fire under the butts of investigators. It took some time, but police officers would finally take the two cases seriously. Even though police officers were officially involved in the investigation of the whereabouts of the two missing teens, the two mothers would not rest. Alicia and Lola did everything they could, including handing out missing person flyers, held community awareness events, took part in news media interviews, and created social media posts, among anything they could think of doing. Lola even took it upon herself to create a tip hotline. That way, anyone who was weary about calling the police hotline would have an alternative hotline to call. Lola's hotline would lead to a bone-chilling tip from an anonymous caller who, despite investigating efforts, wasn't able to be located. The tipster gave Lola two names of people of interest in this case: Jay Frost and Jesus Campos. The caller said that these two people had talked about taking someone's life in detail. The caller believed they were talking about the events that happened the night Enrique Rios went missing. After getting phone records back, investigators determined that Enrique was in contact with a man named Chandel Shannon through Facebook before he went missing. Enrique's phone was turned off after it began traveling towards Knight's Landing. Shortly after leaving his home and before turning off his phone, Enrique made a Google search for Knight's Landing. I imagine Enrique must have felt scared at that point and made the search as a breadcrumb. Elijah's phone was also pinging traveling towards Knight's Landing shortly after he was last seen. Even though police knew who Enrique was in contact with shortly before he disappeared, and both boys seemed to be headed towards Knight's Landing on the separate nights of their disappearances, it would take investigators another 2 years to make arrest announcements. These two mothers and everyone who loved Elijah and Enrique, as well as the communities of Esparto and Woodland, celebrated the teens' 18th birthdays with no answers as to where they were or what happened to them. Elijah Moore would have turned 18 on November 3rd, 2017. Enrique Rios would have turned 18 on January 2nd, 2018. In June of 2018, police investigators would have enough evidence to finally piece together the horrifying details of this case, finally answering the questions of what happened and why it happened. The gruesome details of this investigation are told through phone records, testimony, and an almost unbelievable voice recording. On October 17th, Elijah Moore contacted Chandel Shannon with a request to buy 3 ounces of marijuana. Chandel obliged. Chandel Shannon and Jesus Campos met with Elijah Moore that night. The deal did not go off well. Elijah robbed the men using a replica handgun. David Frost, who was the ringleader of this group and owner of the marijuana, was contacted. Infuriated by what just happened, David Frost contacted his younger brother, Jonathan J. Frost. David told Jonathan about the robbery and indicated that he was going to get his gun from their shared Knight's Landing home. Luckily, though, unbeknownst to David, Jonathan had an app installed on his phone that allowed him to record phone calls. Don't we all wish every criminal would do the same? It's horrifying, though, but let's take a listen.
Hey, homie.
Yeah, thanks for
Hey, bro. Down, bro. Wake up right now. You wake up, put your shoes on right now, bro. One down, we just got robbed by some with a pistol, bro.
No, really?
Yep. Chandel walks him over to the car. I guess he had a gun on him. Pulls the gun on me and says, hey, give me everything you got. Give me that jar of weed. I'm dead serious, bro. So I'm in KL right now. I'm going to go grab my straps.
Okay.
You want to meet me or what do you want to do?
Chandel Shannon suggested they contact Enrique. Enrique was a mutual friend of Shannon and Campos, and they knew that he could possibly get in contact with Elijah. Shannon contacted Enrique and asked him if he wanted to go out and party with him. Enrique agreed. Shannon drove to Esperto, California and picked up Enrique from his home. David Frost, Shannon, and Campos were in the car at the time Enrique was picked up. Enrique was asked to contact Elijah Moore. After refusing to contact Elijah, David Frost took Enrique to a secluded area near Knight's Landing the following day. In absolute cold blood, the heartless David Frost shot Enrique Rios. In a split second, a young man's life was taken because of events that occurred hours prior. Events he knew nothing about, simply because he made friends with people who cared more about revenge. People who suggested they involve the innocent Enrique Rios, putting his life in mortal danger without even a second thought to warn him. On November 4th, 2016, the Frost brothers and Campos were sitting in a vehicle when Campos pointed Elijah out. Elijah was leaving a barber shop near Main Street in Woodland, California. The three men forced Elijah into the trunk of the car and drove to pick up Shannon, who had the gun used to take Enrique's life. The four men then traveled to Knight's Landing. Elijah was forced out of the vehicle and onto the ground at gunpoint by Shannon. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. He was brought to a more secluded area before his ankles were bound. Campos left to obtain shovels, a pickaxe, gasoline, and bleach. Elijah was told he was going to die before the horrific acts that took his life. After his prolonged agony was over, his body was burned. They poured bleach on him, and then he was buried. Hearing these events is like listening to a gruesome horror story. But these events really happened. And they occurred because of a measly $300. $300 worth of marijuana. I hope these four find enough decency in themselves to realize how horrendous and pointless what they did really is.
I'm sitting here getting ready to go to court for Elijah and Enrique. I haven't been online because I've been going through some really dark days, depressed, angry, frustrated, and more so, I guess, than anything, robbed of my son, robbed of his smile, his hug, his love. He loved me so very much as I love him. And for them to think that they can get away with this, that's not gonna happen.
On December 13th, 2018, David Frost was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jesus Campos and Chandel Shannon were sentenced July 22nd, 2022. Chandel Shannon received life in prison without the possibility of parole. A heartbreaking quote from Lola Rios Gutierrez to Shannon after sentencing. You reached out to pretend you were Enrique, to try and cover up the fact that you guys had taken my son and murdered him. You're the that gave David the idea to reach out to my son. If it wasn't for you, he would still be here. I hope he lives with those words. I really do. Jesus Campos was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. More extremely heartbreaking words from Lola. And you, Jesus, you kept saying you were Enrique's friend. You needed him back home? You could have saved his life that night. You had the chance to text Enrique and tell him, hey, these guys are gonna harm you. Don't go with them when they call you.
Every day my prayer has been that the Most High God goes into the enemy's camp and confuse them and turn them on themselves and take the knot out of their tongue so that they can tell the truth. And that's what's happened. These past few days, I've been really quiet because it's just, an answer to a prayer that he came forward to testify against his brothers and the rest of them.
December 7th, 2022. Jonathan J. Frost was the last to be sentenced. He took a plea deal and was called to testify against the 3 other defendants in this case. The plea deal was offered to J. Frost after he made 2 good faith efforts to help authorities in locating the teen's remains. Sadly, despite efforts made, Enrique and Elijah's bodies haven't been found to this day. Jonathan Frost was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole. He acknowledges that he made the plea deal to avoid the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is a quote taken from a letter Jonathan wrote that he read during an interview. To the mother of those boys, no amount of apologies or sorries can ever fix what has been done or can bring back your children. Justice will be served, and I will pay for my crimes. I know I took more than a human. I took someone's son, brother, cousin, nephew, grandson, and friend from this world. And now, more than ever, do I see the damage that I caused. I pray that I will be able to make up for my choices and be able to give back to the world. Nothing will be able to bring back those boys. And nothing will be able to replace a life in this world. Damn right. Yeah. You know what? I wish people would just get a jolt of that hindsight before they commit a crime. Some sort of, shock collar or something. I know, obviously we can't do that, but it would be nice. As you know, this case is not over. It isn't over until Enrique Rios and Elijah Moore are brought home.
I haven't been able to have a grave for him or anything, so I decided to put the most beautiful thing in my life. I love succulents, so I designed this here for Enrique.
That's because Enrique's body still hasn't been found. Lola's being treated for cancer, and she keeps herself busy tending to her succulents. I asked her if it's sunk in that Enrique's gone.
No, and I still don't believe it now. I always see a child walking down the street and I'm like, oh, that looks like Enrique, and I take a double look and then I have to get it through my head. He's not coming back. Our sons were not just nobodies. Our sons are important to not just us, but the community.
No one knows this kind of pain. To not be able to see your child again and not know where they are. He told the reporter to tell me what Elijah said last. And it was He asked to call me to tell me that he loved me. And I told him no, to pray. If I don't know anything else, that's one thing I have instilled in him and my other children, and that's to pray. I don't know some days whether I'm going or whether I'm coming. I don't know some days how I feel because I just don't know what these feelings are. No one can tell me what these feelings are, how to handle this, how to live through this. No one can understand when I want to be left alone. Because I just want to see my son. I just want to hug my son. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. Other than, I guess, feel this and deal with this and learn how to live my life with this. This is the hardest thing any person or anyone could ever go through. I mean, I've lost my mother, I've lost my father, I've lost my brother and friends even. But this pain right here is something totally different. Totally different. And Elijah and Enrique did not deserve that. They did not deserve this.
This is the area police searched after Jay Frost agreed to help them locate the teens' bodies. Due to the series of events that were told to investigators, it is likely that Jay Frost did not know where Enrique Rios' life was taken, or what happened to his body after. Area later searched in Knight's Landing just off of County Road 102. This story is one of the most senseless crimes anyone could imagine. It reminds me a lot of the true story behind the movie Alpha Dog, which is just, it's mind-blowing that people do this crap over basically nothing. And I will be making a short of the locations where police searched, so it's more shareable. My hopes is that someone in the area, maybe a K-9 police officer, or just someone with spare time who lives in this area, will see the video and continue hope in this search. I swear case studies are so much easier than making videos like this. I really don't know why, but I feel like, during a case study, you're trying to help solve or explain something, and that makes it a little bit easier to talk about. But telling the story of people who suffer in these situations is a lot emotionally. I try to detach myself as much as I can from the victims in these stories, but the story is all about the pain of these two mothers and how their pain isn't over. The interviews and testimony given by these mothers is truly a glimpse into the reality that victims of loved ones are left with. Like I said before, I wish all people who decided to commit any crime against another person would get a huge just shock of empathy from the pain they will cause. But that is not the world we live in. Most of us don't even think about doing something like this because we know how much it will hurt other people around and how absolutely senseless it is. I've got a new quote for you guys, and I think I'm going to use it every time I finish one of these videos because I love the quote and I truly stand behind it. May you hold your heads up with love and compassion despite the evils in this world. Thank you guys so much for watching. keep an eye out for that short, because especially if you live in the California area. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps my channel grow, lets me know I'm doing a good job, and best of all, it's free.